Weapons is the latest horror film from writer and director Zach Cregger. This is coming off of his feature directorial debut with Barbarian. He'd done some comedy stuff before, obviously. Whitest Kids You Know. I am completely unfamiliar with that. I've seen like maybe a handful of sketches since Barbarian, but I really only know him as horror director Zach Cregger. This is his second feature film with a bigger budget. He's working with Warner's now instead of Fox. Probably because, you know, Fox won't fucking put Barbarian on fucking physical media. I know it's Disney now, right? Where the fuck is the Barbarian Blu-ray, my guy? The plot of this movie is that at 2:17 a.m. on a random day, 17 kids in a classroom vanished. It's 17 out of 18. One kid remains, but the other 17 are gone without a trace. You see some, like, Ring doorbell camera footage of them running that weird run, and that's all anyone in this town knows about it. They cannot find these kids, and we follow this mystery, this story, from the perspective of a couple different people. You got Justine Gandy, who is the school teacher. You have Archer, who is one of the parents of these kids. A police officer you're following, a druggy, potentially homeless man, a couple other characters, and they all have something to do with this story. The narrative is going to impact them. This mystery is getting unfolded in different ways through their lens. I mentioned before that this is Zach Cregger's second feature debut, but I didn't mention that there was a bit of a bidding war over the script that he had written here, and obviously it's very famous now at this point that Jordan Peele parted ways with his management because they could not outbid Warner's. Jordan Peele, I guess, wanted to secure it at Monkey Paw and Universal Studios, and that bid just didn't work out, so he was like, all right, out the door. So if Jordan Peele is like fucking chomping at the bit for this script, surely, you know, it must be good, is obviously the talk of the town. But of course I was going to be excited for this movie anyways because I loved Barbarian. I thought that was such an excellent movie, and I went in with kind of no expectations. I saw a mysterious teaser trailer. I think it was the only trailer that had come out, so I was like, okay, I don't know anything about this, and Zach Cregger, you know, he's kind of new as far as like horror filmmaking, so I didn't know what to expect, and I walked out just completely surprised, blown away. It was everything that I love about storytelling, about horror films, and injecting some comedy in there as well. It was one of the biggest surprises of that year, one of my favorite films of that year. So obviously I was going to be excited for his follow-up, especially one like this, where there's a bit more marketing around it, but it still feels that same kind of vague that Barbarian did, you know? Like, you're seeing all this stuff and you're like, I have no idea how this is going to connect. I don't know what they're trying to keep hidden. I want to see this movie and uncover the mystery as well. And I was so delighted to find out that this is told non-linear. And what you may not know about me, or if you've seen some of my videos before, I've probably mentioned it somewhere, I'm a big sucker for non-linear storytelling. I love it so much. I love the idea of like you're following a story for so long and then you can just like stop and go to something else, and you know, that could tie in, it could be like a little ways back, or it could be forward. You know, I love that so much, and obviously Barbarian kind of teased with that idea when Zach Cregger did that screenwriting, and a lot of the like go-to is like pointing at Pulp Fiction does it, or Memento does it. Some recent favorites of mine are like Bad Times at the El Royale. I fucking love the way they handled that, you know, cutting from different perspectives, and I also loved Strange Darling, which really utilizes that to their advantage. When done well, you know, those can be really impactful, and I love the way that Weapons utilizes it too, especially because the way they unfold the mystery, I feel like it can only really work with this structure, you know? It keeps the suspense going. The movie is separated in like chapter form. You'll get like a title card that's like this character, and then you're following them, and you know, you're seeing how their lives have been impacted by the you know, disappearance of these kids and what they're doing, and then, you know, there's some creepy things starting to inch in, and you're like, I don't know what's going on. And then as that story progresses, some other stuff happens, and then it ends, it goes to something else. And then they kind of repeat the cycle, it builds to something else, and it might be even more like, what the fuck is going on? But then it cuts to something else, and it's not even something you can immediately, like that thing that you ended on is not going to be immediately followed up on, because there's still more to unveil and uncover. And I just feel like story structure-wise, you know, ramping up the scares through the non-linear storytelling, like there's no way you can really tell this, you know, in that straightforward way, like just doing it chronologically. It kind of has to be this way because it really does play with your suspense. It plays with the mystery of the film. It's really the only way you can kind of tell this story. And once again, the scares in this one, similar to Barbarian, are really fun. Zach Cregger knows what he's doing behind the camera. There's so many points where I had like the theater I was in was not huge. It was kind of like medium to small sized theater, but the audience, it wasn't like they were disruptive and annoying. going, they were engaged, you know what I mean? Like, gasping at just the right moment, at just the right sound effect being heard, and the theater gasps in unison. I was like, dude, this is something special. I can already tell this movie is going to be something special just by how connected everyone feels with it right now. And there's plenty of other points like that where the scares were really getting to people, but also the comedy really gets to people as well. Zach Cregger, once again, you know, comedy background, and Barbarian is able to balance horror, genuine suspense with some genuine great comedy, and that happens here as well. There's a reaction somebody has to a scare that they have just had, and the whole theater was laughing. The actor in question delivered that line so well, everyone was just so into the moment. And other points of comedy, like something during the third act where, let's just say, something won't quit charging, you know, and the way they play with that at one point, and it still kept being funny. But I don't want anyone to think like, oh, is this like a spoof movie, or it's a thing where like it's totally confused, it undercuts the suspense. No, it's baked in, you know, you can't have one without the other. The way I was kind of viewing this movie, especially with all these things, is like, it's really like a suburban, like, grim fairy tale almost, you know, where they're playing around with the absurdity of that. I mean, the movie opens with like a narrator talking about like, you know, this is a true to all creepy, like, right? It's that thing in the first trailer where they do that. It opens, bookends the movie, and then when they proceed to do like the title card thing, like it's a chapter of a story, it's like, yeah, this is like a fairy tale. I usually complain about narration when it might not be needed, but Hero's like, no, they're setting the stage for the fairy tale to unfold. Like, it's like you're reading like a story, you know, a dark story before bed, not necessarily like a warm and fuzzy one for kids, but, you know, a fairy tale like that. I just really love how they played around with the tone and really embraced the tone in that way. I love how they dragged out the mystery of it, and when they finally, you know, do reveal what's going on, I'm not like uninterested all of a sudden. I'm not like, oh, well, okay. I was like, all right, let's see how it plays out now. I'm totally on board. Like, they still stayed committed, and none of the suspense went away. Like, a little over halfway through the movie, there is like that reveal of like what's going on, you know, like what's like kind of the overall thing that's going on, but they still find a way to keep that mysterious as well. Like, I walked away from the movie kind of asking myself, like, you know, I don't really know specifically like in-depth detail of like what a plan was. Like, there's no like big villain monologue or, you know, some big exposition explanation from like a detective that assembled all the or no scene like that where they just lay everything out for you. They reveal some things, sure, but there's still a lot kept in mystery. But I feel like it's that thing of like, I don't need everything spelled out. What you're showing me is like enough. Like, I'm already like theorizing, like painting a picture in my head, and I feel like that's the best way to take this. I mean, this is an ensemble film. Obviously, Julia Garner is, I think the closest you would get to a lead. She's the school teacher who's almost the entire classroom vanishes except for one kid, and, you know, she's kind of the closest you have to a lead, and Josh Brolin is kind of, you know, the second closest you have to that. But, you know, because of the non-linear story structure, you're cutting to different people, you know, different perspectives, it really is best treated as an ensemble thing, and everyone has like these little details sprinkled in that may not be like plot specific important, like we're not necessarily going to have like an arc surrounding this, but it's important for the character. You're really laying the groundwork for why the characters would be doing the things that they're going to be doing, why they would still be involved, or why they would take this turn. Because I think that's the thing also, is like you can set some stuff up character-wise, but you don't have to have like a redemption thing, or like they have to be like a main character who has a great arc. It can be a tragedy as well. It can be a downfall. Another thing I really liked about the character work is something that, you know, you just kind of pick up on from interviews with Zach Cregger. Obviously, like when the marketing was first getting started, some people were like theorizing, like, is this going to be like an allegory for like school shootings or something like that? There's a tragedy concerning a school and students, weapons is the title, so some people made that assumption. And there's definitely, you know, some ways you could connect those ideas, and I wouldn't be surprised if Zach Cregger, you know, kind of fell on that in the writing. But I mean, he's even said like this movie was kind of born from, you know, a personal tragedy, a loss. I think it was one of the guys from The Whitest Kids You Know. He had lost a friend, and every character in this represents a stage of grief, you know, just a personal stage that he was in during that process, the aftermath of that. And once you kind of know that, it's like, yeah, it's hard not to see that just completely personified in these characters. And what a great idea for like a mystery, a horror mystery like this, and to follow the characters through that. It makes them really interesting. And like I said, the little details that just, you know, make you learn more about them as well. It just connects back to what he's trying to write as far as like them representing a stage. Obviously you have like the druggy characters, like a pretty obvious one. You have like the peacemaker guy who just like, hey, let's all chill out, right? You have like the Josh Brolin, like the aggressive, like, I don't understand what's going on, you know, kind of channeling it in the wrong ways, you know, confusion like that. And he's pitch perfect in this. And no disrespect to Pedro Pascal, who was originally going to be in this as that role, but I can't really picture him. Josh Brolin is kind of just, he has that right, just, you could imagine him slipping into that just very aggressive edge. But there is like a genuine warmth under that just very like misguided aggression, you know, that like masculinity covering it up, you know, that he just kind of barely shows that he does love and he does care. It's just he has to protect himself, and you can totally get that with that character, and I think he's excellent in that role. And I mentioned like the druggy like kind of character already, Austin Abrams, who is pitch perfect in this role. Like he definitely reminded me of like some people you might see just on the street, you know, like if you're driving by, you're like, oh, you know, like that. He was so perfect in that role, and he provided a lot of great laughs. But I like how they contrast that with Alden Ehrenreich's cop character, who is trying not to relapse, clearly. You know, he's trying everything to keep, you know, himself on the level, and there's just all these things kind of piling up for him. I love the way they contrast those stages, how he channeled those stages and contrasted them in the characters. And of course, Julia Garner, who I mentioned before, is the closest you get to like a lead. Like, yeah, she's really fantastic. And then she reminds me also, speaking of like, you know, I reminded me of this, you know, she's really reminding me of like some teachers that you would definitely see. Like, she portrays it really realistically. The best performance in this movie comes from Amy Madigan, who I can't say a whole lot about because there's like maybe one shot of her in a trailer. You hear her voice once in one of them. But it would get too much into spoiler territory, but man, she is fucking incredible. As soon as she like walks in for like a proper scene in this movie, you're like, okay, what's going on here? Like, really thrown by the kind of energy she's giving. It's not what you'd expect. And she is so fun in this. Overall, I really only have positive things to say, but I don't want to spoil it. It really is best to go in as blind as possible. I will say that, like, it's a great mesh of horror and comedy, but the last couple minutes of this movie is the greatest punchline that Zach Cregger could have come up with. Like, the entire time I was like, bravo. You know what I mean? Like, God, I can't believe, like, this entire time I'm questioning, like, you know, how are they gonna tie this all together? How is the nonlinear storytelling gonna, you know, tie this all together? How are they gonna get to, like, a conclusion? What's gonna happen? And seeing how it played out was just, it was so exhilarating. And I think I've mentioned before, like, you know, I would like to be a writer. You know, I write in, like, my spare time, and I'm always, like, looking for, like, inspiration, you know, and, like, I'm always inspired by movies, and I want to channel that inspiration into, like, my own work, whatever. And this is a movie. One of my highest praises that I can give a movie is that I watch it and I'm immediately inspired to write after. You know, it just fuels that side of you. Like, man, I wish I could be creative like that. What do I have cooking, you know? And man, Zach Cregger, you know, if he's, you know, making the way for like a bunch of other like horror fans to get more into the genre or to get more inspired to do their own thing, you know, hats off to him. I'm looking forward to what he does, you know, in the future in the horror genre, or anything he wants to do, because I feel like he's setting himself up to be a really talented filmmaker. The way the camera moves in this so much, the way they execute so many scares and actually have like a proper build-up, it's edited so well. The pacing, oh my God, it's like around 2 hours, and there was a point where I was like, oh shit, are we in the third act now? Okay, I guess we are, you know? It just moves so well. I gotta give Weapons an A+. I was exhilarated from start to finish, totally engrossed, totally engaged. I love the music, I love the technical craft of this, I love the cinematography, I just love the actors, I love the writing that went into this. Genuinely, I loved everything about this movie. I know some people might be put off by the conflicting tones, if you will. I'm sure that's an easy thing for some people to say as far as like criticism, but I really do think that if you just examine the movie for what it's trying to do, this exceeds on every level. You know, I think Zach Cregger is an exciting new voice, and I can't wait to see what he does next. I'm not particularly interested in any other like Resident Evil movies, but his next one is a Resident Evil movie that's like separate from anything that's come before, which, hey, if that's just his excuse to make like an original film, whatever. I'll look forward to that. But if you've seen Weapons, leave your thoughts in the comments below what you thought of it. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.